Good evening. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., United States President Joe Biden, and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida in their first ever trilateral meeting on Thursday, April 11. To give us updates on the summit, joining us live is Gabriel Lalo from Washington, D.C. Gab?
While Philippine President Bongbong Marcos, US President Joe Biden, and Japanese Prime Minister Kishida Fumio have ended the first ever trilateral summit in Washington, D.C. on Thursday. All three leaders agreed that the meeting was just the start of a new chapter within their respective countries. In a joint statement, all three have reiterated their commitment to maintaining a free and open Indo-Pacific, growing economic relations, and to the upholding of democracy and human rights. Past investment pledges were also mentioned, along with the launching of the Luzon Economic Corridor, which will support connectivity between major hubs in the island group. US and Japan also said that they intend to put in $8 billion for the field trials of a next-generation ICT system in the Philippines. Well, of course, the highlight of the summit was still the three countries' expression of serious concerns about China's quote-unquote dangerous and aggressive behavior over the South China Sea. In his opening speech, US President Biden reiterated that any attack on a Philippine aircraft, vessel, or armed force in the South China Sea will trigger the Mutual Defense Treaty between the Philippines and the United States. All three leaders also called on China to stop using its Coast Guard in a coercive manner, reminding the Asian superpower that claims over Yungi Shoal have been settled in 2016 through the Permanent Court of Arbitration ruling, where China's 9-line claim was deemed invalid. Aside from the West Philippine Sea topic, the three leaders also discussed other issues with China, like its claim over Japan-controlled Senkaku Islands, while also calling for a peaceful resolution to Taiwan's trade concerns.
Gab, I'm based on that joint statement. It states here that the three countries are calling on China to stop using its Coast Guard in a coercive manner. It also the three countries also called out China for its aggressive behavior in the South China Sea. Now that the Trilateral Summit is over, are we worried that this might escalate the situation in the tensions in the West Philippine Sea? And if so, are we ready to face possibly a more aggressive China?
Well, the three countries haven't discussed it that way. What they mentioned earlier was that they were committed to ensuring the stability and ensuring a free and open Indo-Pacific region. Well, in terms of trilateral movements between the Philippines, the United States, and Japan, they promised to do exercises which will result into deeper connectivity and collaboration between the three countries. These are maritime exercises presumed to be along the Indo-Pacific or possibly within the West Philippine Sea. But as I said earlier, US President Biden has reiterated that any attack on Philippine vessels, Philippine aircrafts, or any armed force would trigger the Mutual Defense Treaty. So, if in terms of assurance, that's far as it goes. President Biden has himself reiterated that before the trilateral meeting started.
Gab, let me go back to the Philippines quickly here. I'm not sure if President Marcos has responded to this, but former President Rodrigo Duterte has some pretty strong words against President Marcos, challenging him to repair the BRP Sierra Madre, even accusing or claiming that President Marcos did not finish his studies. Has President Marcos said anything about the remarks made by President Duterte?
As of now, no statement has been made through the Presidential Communication Office. The Philippine media delegation has yet to interview President Marcos, but later today, Friday, I think it's Friday afternoon here in Washington, D.C., the President would host a meeting with the Philippine media delegation, and we will try to ask him about former President Duterte's claims, accusations, which happened, of course, in the light of this trilateral summit.
Because President Duterte has also denied making that as a supposed gentleman's agreement with China with regard to the West Philippine Sea. Thank you so much, Gab. Take care over there in Washington. We'll be waiting for more updates. Beijing criticizes the United States, Japan, and the Philippines and defends its actions in the South China Sea as lawful after U.S. President Joe Biden hosted a trilateral meeting in Washington. On April 11 at the White House summit, Biden pledged to defend the Philippines from any attack in the South China Sea, which came amid the repeated confrontations between China and the Philippine vessels in the disputed waters. A joint statement issued by the leaders of the states voiced serious concern over Beijing's actions in the South China Sea, slamming its behavior as dangerous and aggressive. Meanwhile, in a press conference, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning says Beijing firmly opposes the country's manipulating bloc politics and any behavior that provokes plans for opposition. Mao adds that while Japan and the Philippines can develop normal relations with other countries, they should not invite factional opposition into the region and engage in a trilateral cooperation at the cost of hurting another country's interests. Mao defends that China's actions in the disputed waters are appropriate and lawful. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden also guaranteed that any attack on a Philippine aircraft, vessel, or armed forces in the West Philippine Sea would invoke the Mutual Defense Treaty. The first ever trilateral summit between the Philippines, the United States, and Japan took place amid heightened tensions in the West Philippine Sea. Former President Rodrigo Duterte denies conceding anything in the deal he supposedly forged with China on the West Philippine Sea. In a press conference, Duterte says the country has not conceded anything to China. The former president adds that the only thing he remembers with his agreement with Chinese President Xi Jinping is to maintain status quo to avoid any conflict in the disputed waters. Duterte's former spokesperson Harry Roque previously said that the ex-president had a gentleman's agreement with China for the Philippines to refrain from bringing construction and repair materials to the grounded BRP Sierra Madre in Ayungin Shoal. However, when asked recording if there is truth to Roque's statement, Duterte maintains his stance about things being on status quo, adding that materials cannot be brought into the waters. Meanwhile, Duterte challenges President Bongbong Marcos to find solutions to repair the BRP Sierra Madre. President Marcos previously admitted being horrified by the alleged Duterte-China deal. Former President Rodrigo Duterte veers away from allegations that he was hiding fugitive and alleged rapist Apollo Quiboloy. In a press conference, Duterte tells Quiboloy not to drag him in his current issues. Duterte also says that he would willingly pour his money if Quiboloy is proven to be at his house. When asked if he would accept Quiboloy if the sect leader surrenders to him, Duterte in response says he will not accept Quiboloy and that he is not the authority. Duterte further says that Quiboloy may be hiding in KJC's properties in Barangay Tamayong in Kalinan District, Davao City. The former president also reveals that he is still communicating with Quiboloy. Duterte was recently named the administrator of the Kingdom of Jesus Christ, which is the sect headed by Pastor Quiboloy. Meanwhile, on April 11, a Pasig City court denied Quiboloy's appeal to suspend the court proceedings on a charge of qualified human trafficking against him. The Metropolitan Manila Development Authority reminds the public of the ban on e-bikes, e-trikes, and other similar vehicles on major roads in Metro Manila starting Monday, April 15. In a press conference, MMDA Chairman Romando Artes says that the ban on the use of e-bikes, e-trikes, and other similar vehicles will strictly push through on April 15.
Nare-remind po kami na starting April 15, tuloy na tuloy po yung pagbabawal sa mga e-trikes, e-bikes at mga tricycle sa mga pangunahin na sangan dito sa Metro Manila. I-enforce po natin yan strictly sa April 15.
Artes adds that a fine of 2,500 pesos will be charged for those who will violate the rule, while the vehicles of those with no licenses or no vehicle registration documents will be impounded. According to MMDA's Memorandum Circular Number 4, e-bikes, e-trikes, tricycles, and kuligligs will be prohibited on some of the major roads in the cities of Manila, Quezon City, Pasig, Mandaluyong, and Makati. Here's the latest roundup of today's top stories. Heads of state of the Philippines, US, and Japan call on China to stop using its Coast Guard in a coercive manner. Beijing slams US-Japan-Philippines summit, says their actions in the South China Sea is lawful. And former President Rodrigo Duterte denies conceding anything in the deal he supposedly forged with China on the West Philippine Sea. These are the stories you need to know today. I'm Neil Mercado. Follow INQUIRER.net on Facebook, X, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Reddit. For more stories, visit INQUIRER.net. Good evening.